We're back. Another episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Show where we discuss Dynasty Fantasy Basketball. We discuss the long term, we discuss the younger players, the upside swings, the future of fantasy basketball, if you will. I'm very excited for today's episode because I get to take a much more positive outlook on a young team as opposed to yesterday's episode where I felt like to my standards I was a little bit more pessimistic than I prefer to be. But today we're talking about the Washington Wizards, and I absolutely love the way that they operated this season. I think if you look back a year or two, they were seen as one of the worst situations in the league, and there was a lot of negativity surrounding their trades to get rid of Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis. And if you look at the returns, it's like, okay, like, yeah, sure, like those aren't phenomenal deals for them. They probably should have gotten better value, but now things are looking really good for them. So we'll get into all that. Before we do, the NBA playoffs are going on right now. So I just wanted to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Also, baseball season is in full swing. We're into the home stretch for both the NBA and NHL playoffs. We are into the thick of things there. Tonight we've got 3 games for the NBA playoffs: the Bucks Pacers game 2, Grizzlies Thunder game 2, Timberwolves Lakers game 2. Do we need to say anything about Thunder Grizzlies? Let's just skip over that one. I think I'd like to see something happen before we discuss that at all. Like something somewhat interesting. Other than that, I think this will be done in 4 games. The Bucks Pacers, I think that's already been a pretty, I guess game 1 was fairly interesting. Can the Bucks, first of all, is Damian Lillard going to play? And then second of all, we'll see how well Giannis is able to carry this team. Does Kyle Kuzma record a stat? I don't know if that's a line that you can bet on. Does Kyle Kuzma record a stat? I would assume that the odds are very low if you're able to bet on that, which I don't know. Bet online is great, but I don't know if they offer that type of line. I'm assuming Kuzma's gonna at least record a singular stat, bare minimum. Hopefully, he does it early on. And then obviously the Timberwolves Lakers going to have plenty of eyes, partially because it's the Lakers, partially because it's Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, et cetera, et cetera. But then also the way Minnesota won in game 1. How do the Lakers respond? The line's currently 5.5 in favor of the Lakers. The odds makers are saying the Lakers are going to bounce back. I'd expect nothing less from them as well. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL and to UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. And then in between all these awesome games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino. It's got all the top Vegas style games. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Let's talk about the Wizards. That's what I meant to say. Let's talk about the Washington Wizards. I'm just going to pull up. Let's see what their record was this past season. 18-64. So they had the second best lottery odds. They had the coin flip for some of these tiebreakers for draft picks. They did that yesterday. So they will pick, they'll have the second best odds. And then they'll pick 18th. They were able to bump up a spot originally. Just looking at Tank and Thumb, they had them at 19. Able to bump up a spot to 18. And then they'll pick 40th as well. So 3 more young guys that they can add on their team right now. They have 4 players from this past draft class. So could be looking at potentially 7 players on the team drafted within 2 seasons if they make all these picks, if they don't make other trades. We'll see what happens. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, I really love the way that they're building out this team. It's what I'd say is probably the best way to develop a team. It's the best way to, I mean, aside from just lucking out in the lottery and getting a franchise player, a couple just absolute superstars, the way that they're doing this is one, even if you get that type of player, something you need to be doing. But two, it's you can see the vision. And I think Washington is a team specifically that has lacked vision since the John Wall Bradley Beal era ended. Um, and I think now they finally have a clear direction for the team. It's going to take a couple seasons to get this thing developed. Obviously, winning the lottery this year would accelerate that timeline. And then they'll still, I would assume that's not enough to completely take them out of the running for a top pick in 2026 as well. So we'll see how the lottery plays out in May because they'll have a 14% chance of getting Cooper Flag. And the worst they can pick is sixth. So there's a very talented class. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out together. First guy we'll talk about, let's talk about Jordan Poole, who is, I mean, coming off, I guess, like an interesting exit with the Warriors. Eventful is another word. We all remember what happened with him and Draymond, and then the trade that sent him to Washington brought back Chris Paul to the Golden State. Very interesting deal at the time. The fact that they had to attach a pick to Jordan Poole to get Chris Paul, from what I remember, pretty interesting. But Jordan Poole, first year with Washington, I think we had very high expectations, expecting him to come in, have a chance to lead the league in scoring. He didn't do that, but he was better in his second season. 20 and a half points, 3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, as you can see if you're watching here on the screen. Shot more efficiently. Was just everything they kind of needed him to be, because they start the season with Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and a bunch of young guys, and you're like, oh, okay, like their growth is going to be stunted by having to play with Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, and that was half true. I would say playing next to Kyle Kuzma was not the best thing for the development of these young guys. And there was quotes from Kuz that kind of made it clear he wasn't super thrilled with the team situation, what he was being asked to do. He got traded. No, that it made sense for him to be moved. Jordan Poole, I think, is a little bit more bought in. The way I like to look at this, and it's not a great comparison, but if you think about what SGA was with the Thunder for a couple of seasons, where it was like, yeah, okay, like this guy is because nobody saw it with SGA at the time, but like a young player that is very, very talented and too good, doesn't necessarily fully line up with the timeline for the rest of the team. I think Jordan Poole's kind of in that same trajectory. He's probably not going to be SGA. He's not going to be an MVP or an MVP candidate, I guess, at this point, but the betting favorite to be MVP. But he's a guy that can help the team, I don't know, stay exciting at times, because he's a very fun player to watch. He's an exciting player. And even when things don't go his way, which I think we had less of this year, he's entertaining to watch. But I think if we're looking at him from a dynasty perspective, he's about to turn 26. Washington is not going to be a competitive team next year, even if they get Cooper Flag. If they luck out, get Flag, I still think they're 2 years away. By design. They have strong veterans on this team. We'll probably briefly talk about them, but guys like Chris Middleton, Marcus Smart, that when they're healthy, Malcolm Brogdon's an unrestricted free agent. Don't think he'll sign back, but we'll see. But like, they have enough pieces to compete for a play-in spot, especially in the East. But they're not gonna give Jordan Poole and Middleton and Marcus Smart 35 minutes a game just to sneak into the play-in tournament. That's not going to happen. So it makes Poole a really interesting player, which I think we'll get into this idea of how to operate with tanking teams a lot as we talk about all the tanking teams that are at the top of the lottery. because Jordan Poole, I mean, he's entering his prime. So like he's a valuable player, but unless they're gonna trade him, there's a certain ceiling he's never gonna be able to pass because like he's entering what should be the prime of his career, and his minutes just aren't gonna be there. 29.4 minutes per game this season, but after the trade deadline, really like in March, only played more than 30 minutes in a game twice, and they won both those games. And that's going to be something that Washington's looking to avoid for, I'd say, at least 2 more years. I don't see a reason to really accelerate the timeline, even if you do have some really fun young players, some fun guys coming off strong rookie seasons, which we'll uh we'll talk about them because that's a little bit more fun than talking about Jordan Poole right now because as good as Poole is, he's going to be a wild card. Yeah, it's something to consider that you're probably not going to get Jordan Poole at his absolute peak. You're not going to get a 34-minute per game Jordan Poole. And when the fantasy playoffs come around for your league, how many minutes per game is he going to get? So I would say if you have him in a league, try and trade him. I mean, okay, you can try and trade anyone for the right value. I'd be looking to move him maybe for somebody that is on a more competitive team. Honestly, if you're looking for players from like play-in teams, because they're always going to be fighting for um, playoff positioning until right there at the end of the season. And that's probably just a general fantasy concept, not dynasty specific. But I think if you can sell on the idea that, hey, Poole might get traded maybe to a better team and he's going to play a lot more, is that happens, we're going to see better numbers from him. If he has better teammates around him, I'm assuming the efficiency goes up a little bit. We saw what he did in Golden State at times when he was playing on their really good teams. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Washington, I don't want to. They're not like they have some decisions to make type of team at this point, but I'd say that this is one of the ones that they definitely need to make. Like, does having Jordan Poole out there as one a good teammate, and two a guy that's won a ring, and three just as like a presence out there that can if things are going poorly for the rookies, let's turn to Jordan Poole. Let's let him kind of take over a little bit. This isn't the Jordan Poole episode. This is the Wizards episode, and there's a lot of guys that are more not relevant, but like more of a priority to figure out exactly what we need to do with them in dynasty leagues than Jordan Poole. Let's talk about Alex Sarr. Just went number 2 overall last summer. My humble opinion is that he should have gone first overall. Probably, who knows how. It's a very weird situation with him really not wanting to play for the Hawks, basically refusing to work out for them. There was the reports that he didn't want to play center and then ended up playing center for most of his rookie year. Like they signed Jonas Valanciunas and then traded him. Like it wasn't even like a pretend to. I guess at first it was a pretend to not have him play center. Pretty quickly became Washington center, and I think that's what makes him so dynamic. A player that can space the floor, player that can. He has the mid-range shot. Moves his feet incredibly well, which was the number one thing for him when he was coming into the draft. It made him appealing to me was the fact that there's not many guys at his size that can move as well as he can. So the fact that he's also going to be playing for France in the Olympics is next to Wemby is going to be unreal. It's going to be very, very difficult to score on this team. But as far as Washington, I'd say Alex Sarr is the closest thing to a franchise player that they have at this point. I don't know if he is ever going to be good enough offensively where you're like, okay, like Alex Sarr is the number one option on a championship team, or he's capable of that. And obviously, there's only a handful of players in the league that are that. But I think Sar can be at best, a number 2 option on a championship team, but I'd say pretty comfortably a number 3 and, making up for it, a lot of it, especially on the defensive end. That's where he's gonna make his money. So, rookie year averaging 13 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, block and a half, 1.6 threes. It's great stuff for fantasy. Great stuff. We'd like to see probably some more rebounding from a 7-footer, but it's not his game. Like they're not drafting him, or they didn't draft him. They're not wanting him to just absolutely dominate the glass. That's not what he's best at. He is an incredible defender, and he can space the floor. And he's 7 feet. So yeah, we want to see the rebounds go up, but not expecting him to be a 12 rebound per game guy in his career ever. I think the main step that we need to see is he shot 39.4% from the floor this year, which is something that I pretty much expected. It was what made me shy away from him in redraft leagues. I think, like I said, controlling the paint isn't his game. He is a perimeter player, basically, with what makes him unique. Because obviously, every 7-footer you want to be able to score in the paint, but what sets him apart is his perimeter defense and his perimeter offense. So I'm not necessarily surprised that he shot poorly. I'm 39%. That's okay. That's a step below what we want to see. But I think it's something that we'll see improve over the next few years as he gets stronger. We see him listed here as 7 foot 205 on NBA.com. I'm certain that there's already been an updated weight where he's significantly more than that. I mean, I'm looking at Basketball Monster as well. They have him at 224 already. So don't know when those weights were taken, but I would assume that there will probably be a nice media day quote in I guess that'll come early October, maybe late September, where they're like, "Oh yeah, Alex Sarr is he gained 15 pounds this summer. Like he's going to be a stronger player. Like he put on some muscle. We're expecting a lot from him this year. It's gonna be a really good quote. People are gonna get excited about it, but that is something that we really want to see from him. That's good. He was my favorite player in this past draft class. I'm excited to see his continued development. Just turned 20. Excuse me, he's about to turn 20. I'm getting my dates all mixed up. It says it right there on the screen. April 26th. About to turn 20. Yeah, I'm willing to be patient. I'm not going to overreact to a summer league dud. Never was going to. Which, that's pretty nice rule of thumb there just for a lot of young guys, but was never going to do that with him. But he's not the only rookie that Washington has. As I said, they had 4 players on this roster from the 2024 draft class, with the Kyle Kuzma trade that brought them back AJ Johnson, which just a great trade. You send away a guy that doesn't want to be there. You bring in a guy in Chris Middleton that probably bought in a little bit more as a veteran than we were expecting him to. And then you get in AJ Johnson as well, who, is also 20 years old. It didn't make sense when the Bucks drafted him either. But then to give up on him so quickly, like if you're trying to win a championship around Giannis, why are you drafting a 20-year-old that's considered, 19-year-old at the time, that's widely considered to be a project, and then trading him to bring in Kyle Kuzma as part of a package that sends away, I don't know exactly how he ranks in Bucks history, but a player that has a long history with the Bucks and is like one of the greatest Bucks of all time. I'd say top 10. I don't know. I'm sure a Bucks fan can give me a much better list than I can come up with off the top of my head. Very interesting deal. Very interesting situation. But I thought AJ Johnson showed some flashes. So we're just looking at the numbers. Not ideal. 7.6 points, 2 rebounds, 2.6 assists per game as a rookie. 38.5% from the floor. And a few of those games, like, so he played in 29 games. Let's see, 7 of those were with the Bucks, and 6 of those games with the Bucks, he played less than 5 minutes. His first 4 games with Washington played less than 10 minutes, and then the last few weeks he played a significant role. Had some strong games. Had an 8 assist game in there in the season finale where he played all 48 minutes, so that inflated that a little bit. But he also had a 20-point game, a couple 6 assist games. I think that there was enough flashes there from AJ Johnson for me to be very excited about him joining this core that, like I said, they're doing things the right way. They're prioritizing the future of the franchise. They're not doing what a couple of other teams have done or did this year and have the last few years, which just is so frustrating. Is they're trying to be sneaky about it. Like, we can pick up on things. The average fan is a little bit smarter than I think everybody gives them credit for. We can see that these players are being intentionally rested, even if you label them with an actual injury. You can find some sort of ailment that they can play through to say, look, we need to improve our lottery odds. There's no way you're playing, especially when, oh, this, X player is very healthy when they're when they're playing the Celtics, and then the next game they play Charlotte, and all of a sudden they're injured again. Interesting. Wow, it's crazy how that injury pops up. Hmm. Well, that's not what we're thinking here. So, but before I mean, that was a little bit of a rant there. What Washington did was from day one said, hey, we are going to play some veterans, but we're never going to play them 35 minutes per game. And we're going to rely on our young guys as much as possible because they're going to grow if we use them and we allow them to play through their mistakes. And we're playing for 2 or 3 years from now. We're not playing for this season. And nobody cares. Everybody's like, oh man, that's great. Love what Washington's building. They go under the radar a lot. I mean, nobody's expecting them to win. Nobody's picking them to win a championship. But it works for us in Dynasty. It works for us in just redraft leagues because we're able to see these young players play. So in Dynasty, you're able to get a really good evaluation, see the growth. I think is also just a really cool thing because, if we're just AJ Johnson specifically, how are we supposed to evaluate this guy when he was with the Bucks? Like I said, his last game with the Bucks, he played 29 minutes, was traded just a couple days later at the deadline because the Bucks rested everybody. They lost to the Thunder by 30 because Giannis, Dame, etc. didn't play. He was like, oh, cool. Like AJ Johnson, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 threes, 29 minutes. Like against the Thunder, like even I don't remember if the Thunder played everyone that game or not, but even if they don't, they're so deep that it doesn't matter. It's like playing real NBA competition. It was good to see, like, to get a look at him. But we were getting a look at all the Wizards young guys all season long. It's just interesting. So I'm hoping that more teams see how this works for Washington and they start to replicate that as opposed to some of the injury report shenanigans that we've gotten over the last few years that have made a lot of people frustrated with fantasy basketball in general. Let's talk about next. Let's go to here. We'll do this because probably got to speed this up for time's sake. But Keyshawn George was one of my. I wasn't super high on him. I needed to look back. I meant to look back, find exactly where I had him. I'm pretty sure I had him like as a second rounder on my board. Ended up going first round. Just wasn't super high on him. Knew that he'd be able to shoot eventually, but wasn't really expecting him to be able to do much else. And maybe that was just a miss by me. Rookie season averaged 8.7 points, 4.2 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Shot the ball pretty bad. Pretty bad. I'm pulling up the percentage right now. But also, I think, like I said, we know he's going to be able to shoot. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well. 37.2% is what we call bad. But he also averaged a steal, 0.7 blocks, 1.7 threes. He had a few games in March where he had, I mean, like a 3 steal, 3 block game. He had a 5 block game, a 3 block game, three steal games in a row, and did that while shooting better. Not great, but better. Had some, like, just looking at this, he had a 19 points in a game. I'll say it like this: 19.7 boards, 5 assists, 3 steals, a block, and 4 threes while shooting 55% from the floor. 6'11". Like, I see it. He's one of my favorite rookies from this past class because I like, especially for fantasy. He was able to do a little bit of everything at times. He's a better playmaker than I imagined he would be able to be at the NBA level. And the defensive stats are there way more than I was expecting. So I'm fully expecting him to figure out the shot. That's the thing, is with the way that Washington has operated, he was able to play through bad shooting and just keep playing. He was able to showcase a lot of other things, reasons to be excited about what he can do. I would say if I were to rank just the players from this past class from Washington, I might go Sar, Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington, AJ Johnson, with probably the smallest gap between Keyshawn and Bub, who we can talk about now. But I think that it's cool to see Washington do so well with their picks. I mean, having like taking 3 players in the first round and having all of them, at least in my eyes, look like pretty good picks at this point. It's pretty cool. Bub Carrington was a late riser. Ended up going last pick of the lottery. Averaged 9.8 points, 4.2 rebounds, 4.4 assists, and 1.7 threes per game as a rookie. As is the case with basically the rest of the team. Shot 40.1% from the floor. Bad. But he's really young. So, like, it's okay. He hasn't turned 20 yet. Yeah, we want to see this. We want to see some of these guys play a lot and develop. So that's what we're gonna see. And I'm like, Bub Carrington's still gonna be a significant part of the rotation next year. Some of his best games were when Jordan Poole was out or Malcolm Brogdon was out. So, like, if we're looking back to what we talked about yesterday with the Jazz, where it's like, okay, if they get a guy like Dylan Harper, what does that mean for Isaiah Collier? Or what does that mean for Keontae George? But Bub Carrington's already shown like he can still be semi-productive. Obviously not quite the same level of production, but like play well next to guys who have the ball in their hands, not as the primary playmaker. We got to see him in a lot of different situations this year. The Jazz aren't necessarily the worst team about that because they did play a lot of their young guys down the stretch, but it was with all their veterans injured, quote unquote. So I'm less, I guess, pessimistic about what the draft could mean for some of these guys coming off really strong seasons for the Wizards. I think Bub, ended this year on a high note as well. Had the buzzer beater that ended Washington season with a win. And then they bumped up and now only have the second best odds to get Cooper flagged, which if you're a fan, maybe you say, oh man, I'd rather have, I guess it wouldn't even be a better chance at Cooper flag, but would cap your drop to pick 5 instead of pick 6. I think having that moment for Bub, having that moment for the team, and head into the offseason on a high note just solidifies that you're focused on development. You're not focused on losing, which I think, honestly, that may be the best way to say the difference between what the Jazz and what the Wizards did. The Jazz, at times, it definitely felt like, and they weren't the only ones, but that's who we talked about yesterday, that they were prioritizing losing. And that's what it felt like with, some of these veterans not playing for most of the second half of the season. Whereas Washington, to me, it felt more like they're prioritizing development. And I think the difference there is going to pay off for the Wizards in the long run. If we're looking at just Bub down the stretch as well, right before he had 15, 7, 9, 3 threes in that last game. Game before that, 18, 5, and 11. I guess a week before that, 32, 9, 7 with 7 threes. I think he's got the potential to be like the point guard of the future in Washington. He has the upside for it. He's so young. So I'm optimistic about what he can do next year, regardless of kind of what happens with this draft. I think the fact that Dylan Harper is probably the best point guard prospect would, I guess, be the quote unquote worst case scenario for Bub. But I still think he's good enough to be productive, even if Washington ends up going with a point guard. All right. I know. Let's see. We'll end. I think there's multiple guys I still want to talk about, but we'll try and breeze through them. So I think this is probably the last like main guy that like you just kind of have to talk about with the Wizards is Bilal Coulibaly, who I think had some not massive expectations, but slightly higher expectations heading into this season. He had some really good stretches and then some pretty stretches. Ended up playing 59 games, averaged 12.3 points, 5 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.1 threes. Shot was not ideal. Shot 42.1% from the floor after shooting 43.5% as a rookie. I think the other thing here is that he's 20. He's about to turn 21 this summer, just after Summer League, I believe. Like Washington, all these guys are on a similar timeline. Coulibaly is going to be, or at least has the upside to be, just an elite perimeter defender. And that's a guy that you need to win a championship in the NBA. He's going to have to keep developing offensively, but he can be that wing stopper that you need to win a championship. If you look at any team that wins, they have at least one or a guy that is upping his play to fill that role. Like it's just required, especially with some of the incredible like wing, such as perimeter scorers in general. Can't even say a specific position anymore because you're having, 6'8" point guards and 7'5" bigs all shooting step back threes. You just need guys that can guard on the perimeter, and Bilal Coulibaly is definitely that. And the defensive stats are going to make him great for fantasy. We just need him to. The 3.4 assists were also solid. Like he's not a guy that's going to be a 5 or 6 assists per game guy, but 3.5 is actually pretty good. So I think that's pretty encouraging. The main thing is just more efficient shooting. That's what we need to see. But that's going to come. He's 20. Like it's going to come around, and it may not be elite, but as long as it's closer to average, he's going to be a very important piece. Again, just a lot of these guys are players that I'm a fan of, and that's why I'm very excited. It stinks that they're, not that divisions even matter in the NBA, but it stinks that they're in the same division as the Hawks, my Hawks. So, oh well, I like basketball. I don't need to hate on other teams just because they're, unless they're playing my team. There we go. That's the best way to put it. One other guy, just want to highlight quickly, Tristan Vukcevic. The last 2 seasons during silly season has shown a lot of flashes. No idea how he plays out in the rotation next year. Because at the end of last year, it was like, okay, like, this guy's shown a lot. Like he could start at center next year. Oh, they really want to play power forward. I think Tristan Vukcevic at center, that could be an interesting dynamic. Couple of 7-footers that can space the floor. And then he barely played. Played pretty well down the stretch of the last 2 seasons. Interested to see how he fits into the rotation next year. Assuming he's back. Now, I feel like he's a free agent. I think I have that somewhere. Yeah, he's a restricted free agent. Knew that one. Assuming he's back. if he ends up elsewhere in a place where he can play more, that's going to be intriguing. I think a very fantasy friendly game. The other guys in Washington, shout out to Justin Champagny. I've just got all their numbers here, but I'll pull out the screen. Shout out to Justin Champagny. Earned a 4-year, almost $10 million deal because he played really well down the stretch of this season. I think and really for the whole year, but especially down the stretch, I think he's a guy that you have to consider part of this young core. He's not the focal point by any means, but he's 23, and first couple of years in the league didn't really do much, and then this past year it's like, oh, okay, like this guy's pretty good. But that's what you get when you prioritize development early on. You get young players minutes, even the ones you weren't expecting to, and you end up finding, I guess, kind of like a diamond in the rough kind of player. I wasn't expecting to say anything, I guess, about Justin Champagny for dynasty leagues, but he's a guy that you have to at least keep an eye on. And then obviously you have the veterans. I mentioned Middleton, Brogdon, Smart. I don't know how long. I mean, they may look to trade them at some point. Middleton has a player option. There's no way he's going to not pick up his $34 million player option. That's just not going to happen. He's not going to get anywhere close to that in free agency because of his injury history. I assume Brogdon's gone, and then Smart's still under contract. Do they look to trade Middleton or Smart at the deadline to try and maximize value? Or do they just kind of write out the contract because having them as unofficial overpaid assistant coaches that also play at times? I think, is that what's more beneficial for the team? I don't know. We'll see. In my mind, the ideal scenario would be you keep them around as long as possible, and then the trade deadline, you try and get something. Just because unless they're just like, hey, like, no, even when I'm a free agent, I want to resign on a team-friendly contract and I want to be part of building something here. I don't understand why, but sure, it's great. Keep them around. They're committed. But other than that, I think you have to get what you can. We'll see how that plays out. There's a lot. There's a lot of Wizards guys to talk about. Just because they are such a young team with a lot of just intriguing young players. These episodes were supposed to be 20 to 30 minutes, and we're almost at 40 just because Washington has a lot of guys to talk about. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Show, which is part of the Old Man Squad Fantasy Network. If you're watching, you can see on the screen, but if you're listening, you can follow me on Twitter at NoRuben22. My Blue Sky, you can follow me there as well. Same thing, NoRuben22.bsky. Whatever else it is. You can follow Old Man Squad on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on YouTube. You can subscribe. There's Discord. There's a whole lot of things. All of it will be in the description for this episode. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode, and I will see you next time.